set to indicate that they also own the turbine and provide the necessary information for the customs to transport to Russia. The German newspaper Die Welt also reports that despite the sanction, Russia's incomes from selling raw materials to Germany is constantly increasing. In June alone, the number rose to 3.5 billion euros. Putin and his cronies are earning more this year from doing business with Germany. In addition, more gas remains unextracted from the ground and can be left for sale later, so that even more gas would flow from Germany to Russia. Moving to Poland, the technical commissioning of all three gas compressor stations for Baltic Pipe has been completed. They are necessary for the domestic distribution of the gas, which will be imported through Baltic Pipe from the Norwegian shelf. Baltic Pipe is one of the projects aiming at diversifying the Polish gas supply. Another one is the LNG terminal in Świnoujście. Next deliveries are arriving at the terminal each week. At the same time, the Polish oil refiner and petrol retailer PKN Orlen has completed the merger with Grupa Lotos. According to the company's website, the move will allow the execution of more ambitious projects and the increase of Polish energy independence. The merger has become a fact. Today we are combined concern, a concern of great importance. It is a great day for the Polish economy. In the second quarter of 2022, the Orlen Group achieved profit of 3.7 billion Polish zlotys. There is also another piece of news coming from Poland, one that has been welcomed especially warmly by the Polish consumers. Namely, just like in many other countries, also here in Poland, the fuel prices at the petrol stations in the recent time have dropped significantly. For TVP World,
The American conservatives converged, this time in Dallas, Texas. Attending the conference was Viktor Orban and top GOP officials preparing for the next electoral campaign. With the resurgence of Donald Trump, the next presidential race in the United States may prove heated.
Though not in power, Donald Trump still seems to hold a tight grip on the Republican Party. In Dallas, in the Lone Star State, the GOP officials have gathered to discuss the future of their country. One of the attendees was the Hungarian Prime Minister, who took the stage and shared his words of wisdom.
The globalists can all go to hell. I have come to Texas.
American internal politics are still boiling as both the Republican and Democratic parties engage in verbal clashes. Coming weeks will show if the grand old party is still under the Trump-favored dream.
Robert Lewandowski, one of the best football players in the world and the captain of the Polish national team, has been presented to FC Barcelona fans at their stadium, the Camp Nou.
So the entire football world turned to the capital, Catalonia, as Robert Lewandowski has been officially presented as a new player of FC Barcelona. Fans have been gathering at Camp Nou since early morning for the presentation. Many of them turned up in Lewandowski's jerseys.
My happiness is so high that it's sometimes difficult to find the words to explain exactly what kind of feeling I have in this one. But that was something amazing that so many fans support me already. In the first time in the stadium, it means a lot.
One of the best strikers in Bundesliga's history will continue to play with his famous number 9 at a new club. FC Barcelona paid Bayern Munich 45 million euro for Lewandowski in one of the hottest transfers of this summer. Around 45,000 fans gather at the Catalonian capital for the presentation, including the striker's family. Similar crowds turn up only several times in Barca's history for such renowned players as Zlatan Ibrahimovic or Neymar. Lewandowski signed a contract which will make him a Barcelona player for the next 4 years.
And with me to talk about Lithuania helping Moldova and much more is Marius Patrisaitis, Lithuanian MP. Sir, thank you very much for joining me.
Добрый вечер, good evening.
Good evening. Now, Lithuania is planning to take up 2,000 Ukrainian refugees who are currently in Moldova. What challenges is Moldova facing? Why do you need our help?
Oh, hindi na inuhulugan yung graduate ko, nandun kasi siya kabilang subdivision na siya.
To hear from the very first lips from the president, from the chairs of committees,
Ay, pag nag-usap kayo
on my visit 1 month ago, just when that was just 1 week after Moldova received the candidate status for the European Union, and there's upcoming around 100 reforms on 100 different spheres. And obviously there's a lot scale Russia's aggression on Ukraine,
But I would like to
genocide as well.
concentrate. I would like to
refugee.
concentrate on the challenges that it's facing when it comes to refugees coming from Ukraine.
Yes, so as you know, Moldova was one of the first after Poland to receive a very high level of refugees. Moldova has received 500,000 in just a few days. At the moment, I think there's at least 1 month ago, there was 70,000 people who have left. So more than 400 people have traveled abroad. But this is a very big number for a very small country such as Moldova. And they still have 70,000 and they're doing well. Mostly they're women and children, but obviously we have to share this burden, and it's just a sign of solidarity. Though these 2,000 is just a tier of this large well, ocean of suffer when it comes to also the refugees.
Now, how will that help look like? I would like to start with, I guess, Lithuanian officials going in. Who is going to talk to Ukrainian refugees? Are they going to be asked whether they want to go to Lithuania or not?
I don't think I cannot exactly tell about the procedures because I'm a member of the parliament and it's a little different work when it comes to, for example, the Minister of Interior and officials, administration, and the people who actually create these procedures. But I think for 2,000 people, it's not a challenge for Lithuania. We also have even more refugees at the moment than Moldova has at the moment. So it's the logistics also of the volunteers we have. We have charity, well, let's say not companies, but NGOs, associations that help with such processes, and they're already working. So for 2,000 more people, I don't think it's a problem procedures or a logistic problem. But of course, it will be on voluntary basis, as I know at least one-fourth of one quarter. I mean, 500 of them already visited, already came to Lithuania and establishing themselves at the moment. So it's just around, well, a little more than 1,000 left. So I don't think there will be any challenges. But of course, if the president doesn't want, well, nobody will be deported. That's for sure.
Now, you said you have been to Moldova a month or so ago. What did you see there? What does the situation look like when it comes to refugees?
Well, when it comes to refugees, we actually, unfortunately, we didn't visit the campus of refugees. It was on our plans, but because of other meetings with officials, we didn't have time to visit the campus. So I also cannot tell much, but most of my time I spent in the capital, Chisinau, and it seems that well, I couldn't recognize who's the refugee, who's the local one in just 2 or 3 days being there, but everything seemed organic, everything seemed natural, and Romanian, Russian-speaking people in the capital, they are interlinked somehow, and the capital from the outside looks all right, but obviously there's much more problems when it comes to energy security, prices, inflation, which is over 30%, and political instability, which is, well, I wish them all the best to balance this turbulence, which is also upcoming, especially in autumn.
Now, once refugees go to Lithuania, what type of help are you, as a country, of government, is going to offer them?
There's well, I can tell from the very beginning of the large-scale war that it was a lot of electricity houses and flats provided by the government and municipalities when it comes to well, public housing. What can the government do? But what was touching my heart the most is the people, our civil society that gave their extra flats, extra houses, or even allowed them to stay in their houses. Also, so even myself, we gave a flat to one family of Ukrainians. But there's also initiatives, subsidies, and well, it's little reforms when it comes to entering the market, finding a job, providing for yourself.
So we don't have a lot of time, but I want to ask you another. I want to change the topic and ask you about Taiwan. Last year, in Lithuania, the Taiwanese representative office in Lithuania had been opened. How do you look at the situation in Taiwan right now? What is your take on that?
first of all, I want to say how happy I am that this government, well, I'm in the ruling coalition, so I just, of course I have to be happy about this because it was partly my own decision as I work in the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Parliament. So, and I'm a vice chair of the Friendship Group with Taiwan and also visited Taiwan in the end of last year. I met with the President many more, so, and keep a very close contact of the head there. We call him ambassador of the Taiwanese representative office. So they're doing a good work, a good job. Throughout this time, it will be 1 year in just a few months. But when it comes to the situation in Taiwan, on the island, of course we saw the turbulence, which was also you could obviously predict hysteric Chinese reaction of the visit of Nancy Pelosi and also these missiles on the waters. It also touched the economic waters of Japan, which is, I would say, a scandal. So it doesn't only touch Taiwan, it touches the United
Hello and welcome to the World News here on TVP World. My name is Ashim Kumar. Headlines. Further sanctions on Russia announced. Madrid prepares to host the 2022 NATO summit. 2.5
Colin,
million
presyohan mo nga itong
return
patis.
home.
Wala dito. Patis, itong ano.
The
Dati
Russian
puti,
invasion of
ganyan.
Ukraine and the resulting global economic fallout dominated the agenda at the Group of Seven summit in Germany. World leaders also used the opportunity to discuss other projects and areas of interest.
The summit's participants were eager to get to work during the second day of deliberations, as was President Zelensky, who connected to the meeting via video call and urged the G7 leaders to supply more weapons to Ukraine so that the war could end by winter. Even though voices warning of exhaustion with the war have been appearing in the West, its leaders emphasized the dangers of a Russian victory in any shape or form.
There is no deal that the President Zelensky can can really do. So in those circumstances, the G7 supporters of Ukraine around the world have to continue to help the Ukrainians to rebuild their economy, to get their grain out, to export their grain, and of course we have to help them to protect themselves.
Germany, which was this year's summit's host, maintained the need for support for Ukraine, but continued its narrative about the need for caution in the current circumstances.
We are also cautious that we will help the Ukraine as much as is possible, but that we also avoid that there will be a big conflict between Russia and NATO, and this is what is of essence, to be tough.
Outside of Ukraine, the G7 is also prepared to work together in other regions. One of the main concerns was China's Belt and Road Initiative, which a group of 7 considers a rival economic project.
We're here today because we're making this commitment together as a G7 in coordination with one another to maximize the impact of our work. Collectively, we aim to mobilize nearly $600 billion from the G7 by 2027.
Nevertheless, there was also some humor at the summit at the cost of none other than the Russian leader. As the G7 summit comes to a close, the world's eyes are now turning to the upcoming NATO summit in Madrid.
Leaders of the NATO alliance will be deliberating their collective response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine at the upcoming summit in Madrid. The Russian aggression has caused massive political, economic, and security-related uncertainty across Europe and the world.
Europe and the Western world are faced with an unprecedented security crisis in whose shadow the Madrid talks will be held. Perhaps the most important subject to be discussed is the accession of both Sweden and Finland to the alliance. Many are hoping for a breakthrough in this regard, as Turkey has hitherto been opposing the accession.
On Tuesday, again with the request of the NATO Secretary General, there will be a 4-way presidential level summit in Madrid with the attendance of our President, Turkey, NATO, Sweden and Finland.
The accession of both countries is very important, as they offer significant strategic advantages, not just when it comes to Central Eastern Europe.
General conscription, a well-manned and trained reserve, and a strong will to defend the country are the foundations of Finland's defense. Finland's location on the Baltic Sea, diplomatic experience with Russia, and advanced capabilities make it an asset to the alliance. Sweden is both a highly capable military partner and home to a world-class defense industry.
Yet even ahead of the summit, the North Atlantic Alliance is already committed to make concrete decisions. In the face of the Russian aggression, NATO has announced new defense measures.
At the summit, we will strengthen our forward defenses. We will enhance our battle groups in the eastern part of the alliance up to brigade levels. We will transform the NATO response force and increase the number of our high readiness forces to well over 300,000.
Ahead of the summit, the Baltic states are among the member states which are most interested in discussing updating NATO defense strategy. This is because, in the case of a possible Russian attack, it would be on the front line of the battlefield.
We need change because the strategy applied currently is called tripwire, so it is the strategy to send a signal. In case of an attack, a signal is sent and the alliance is heading to defend the territories and countries. You can see what happened in Ukraine, but it means to come later to help out those territories.
Security in Madrid ahead of the summit is crucial. Anything can happen.
People are not aware of the danger that the flight of a drone can pose in such a critical place as this, and these days, all the more so.
The NATO summit in Madrid will take place between June 27th and 28th. It is the alliance's first major scheduled summit since 2018.
Civilian facilities in Kyiv are shelled indiscriminately, while President Zelensky remotely participated in talks with G7 leaders in Germany. Observers suggest that Putin is using the occasion to send a message to the organization from which Russia was expelled in 2014.
people were killed and 20 wounded by Russian shelling of a shopping center in the city of Kremenchuk in central Ukraine.
Россия сегодня снова ударила ракетами по Киеву рано вранці.
Russia once again hit Kiev with rockets today, early this morning. The Second World Army triumphantly defeated a kindergarten and an apartment building. A man who was only 37 years old was killed. There are wounded among them a girl named Zhenya. She is 7 years old.
Sloviansk was again attacked by Russian missiles. Residents were deprived of electricity and some lost their homes.
Unfortunately, it was not possible to avoid casualties. There are dead and wounded. Therefore, remember to evacuate. The evacuation is ongoing. Protect yourselves. We are together. Let's stick together.
State emergency services in Kiev reported that a fire broke out in an apartment building hit by a Russian rocket. So far, 2 people were rescued from ruins, including 1 child. But even though the capital is under attack by Russian missiles, residents are trying to live their lives and enjoy the weather. In the east of the country, Ukrainian forces have carried out 2 successful attacks on 2 Russian ammunition depots in the Luhansk region. Additionally, Ukraine carried out 10 precision strikes at Russian troops based on occupied Snake Island. But the situation in the east remains tense, with heavy fights for Lysychansk. Ukrainian troops stand their ground as the battle rages on.
Despite the ongoing war in Ukraine, increasing numbers of refugees are returning to what is left of their homes there. Poland, which was the primary destination for most of the displaced, however, continues to support those who choose to remain in the country.
Since the beginning of Russia's aggression, a total of more than 8 million people have left Ukraine, with over 4 million of them heading to Poland. Since day one, Polish government has been a staunch supporter for all the displaced.
Działania, które podejmujemy jako rząd, są to działania.
It's the 4th month of our help. So far, our help has had a humanitarian character associated with things like accommodation and food for refugees.
Także z taką pomocą.
But as the war progresses, more and more people decide to come back. According to the Polish border guard, more than 30,000 of them cross the border every day back to the country. Despite that, Polish government announced new helping measures for all the displaced within its borders.
The activities the government undertakes are now moving into a new phase of systemic help. At the beginning of July, we are starting a phase of help focused on enabling refugees the best adaptation and activation in Poland.
So far, 1.2 million of Ukrainians in Poland were given social security number, and 250,000 have found work. Numbers that the government wants to expand to enable all displaced stay back to normalcy. But what drives the ones who decide to return?
My sister and our family is in Ukraine. Vacation starter, and we want to visit family because we miss them.
You felt safe enough to go back to Ukraine?
No, but we think that we will feel safer with family.
According to the United Nations data, a total of 2.5 million people have returned to Ukraine, and almost 5.3 million still remain scattered around Europe. And as security in Ukraine remains uncertain, many of them have a tough decision to make: return home and rest, or stay abroad.
For more on this story, we're going over to our correspondent, Ovidio Shnicheya, at the Lviv train station. Ovidio, hello. What are you hearing from the passengers
the railway station here in Lviv? And there I saw many people who were returning from places in the west, like Poland, back to Ukraine. But also, to be frank, I met quite a few people who were on their way to leave Ukraine from places, especially in the east, like Kharkiv, also like the Donbass, but also people from central Ukraine. After the recent missile strikes on that region of Ukraine, people were also moving away. Lviv here is a sort of transit city on which people can change their trains when they're going from the east of Ukraine. They can go here by train and then across the border into Poland. But it's also a city from which people, after crossing border into Poland, can go on trains further back home. And I met some of these people. Now, some of them were returning just for the summer holidays. Some of them were returning permanently, and I asked these people what were their reasons to return to Ukraine.
I need to visit my mom and my apartments, check if it's all and several cases, and altogether the reasons I'm here.
I want to see our families and friends, and I think the main reason is our families and friends. We are going to see them to be happy anyway. Yes, it's war in our country, but family is first, and their love, support fills our hearts, and we feel safe because of them.
Well, we wish them well, Ovidius. Now, President Zelensky met with Maya Sandu, the President of Moldova. What can you tell us about that meeting?
Well, Ukraine and Moldova are those two countries which most recently became candidates to join the European Union. So I'm sure these were the topics of this meeting here in Ukraine. Maya Sandu, the President of Moldova, also went to Bucha, a place where the Russian forces committed countless war crimes against the civilian population there. And so she wanted to go there to see that place with her own eyes. But I am sure afterwards she visited Kyiv, and at this meeting with Zelensky, I am sure that President Sandu spoke to President Zelensky about those many procedures through which both Moldova and Ukraine have to go through before they become members of the European Union.
Ukraine and Moldova need help. We want this war to stop, this Russian aggression against Ukraine to be stopped as soon as possible. We want to stay part of the free world. We want to have our chance to define our future, to decide on our own, and of course we want to enjoy peace, and we want to be one day part of EU.
Thank you for that, Ovidius, and stay safe. Let's see what else we have coming up for you in this bulletin. An unusual exhibition in Warsaw's Old Town. The premier tennis tournament in the world kicks off this week. For the first time in a century, Russia has defaulted on its foreign sovereign bonds, the result of ever tougher Western sanctions that have cut off payment lines to creditors abroad.
For months, Russia has divided ways to avoid the sanctions imposed following the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine. However, the grace period around $100 million in deferred interest payment due Monday 27th expired at the end of the day on Sunday, a deadline termed an event of default missed. Peskov reiterated on Monday that reserves were blocked unlawfully, and any attempts to use them would amount to outright theft.
In fact, these attempts will amount to outright theft, and these claims of US about default in Russian economy are devoid of any legality. Russia made the required bond payments in currency due in May, and the fact they had been blocked by the Euroclear and didn't come to recipients is not our problem. In this case, there is no reason to call the situation a default.
But the path to this point has been far from normal, since Russia has resources to pay its obligations and has attempted to do so, but has been thwarted by sanctions. Since the beginning of March, the country's Eurobonds have traded at distressed prices, and the central bank's foreign reserves have remained frozen, and the largest banks have been cut off from the global financial system.
Russian military equipment captured by the Ukrainian army has been on display in Warsaw. Ukrainian officials stressed that the Polish capital was the first choice for the exhibition because of the unique bond between the two countries.
I'm at the Castle Square in Warsaw, where the Ukrainian armed forces are displaying some of the equipment captured from the Russian army. The exhibition, titled For Our and Your Freedom, was prepared by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and the Chancellery of the Polish Prime Minister.
I would like to stress that it is the first such exhibition in Europe. It was very important to us and is symbolic that the exhibition be opened in Poland first, because Poland is closest friend and partner.
The main pieces of the exhibition are a T-72 main battle tank and an EMSTA-S self-propelled howitzer. The Polish government has provided hundreds of T-72 tanks of its own to Ukraine, while the Ukrainian artillery was provided with Polish-manufactured AHS Krab self-propelled howitzers.
Dlatego, że dzisiaj bohaterscy ukraińscy żołnierze
Today, brave Ukrainian soldiers defend not only their fatherland, not only Ukraine, they're defending the safety of Poland and Ukraine. What a heroic resistance. If it wasn't for the determination, if it wasn't for the courage of the Ukrainian soldiers and volunteers, ordinary civilians who took up arms, it would be very likely that Russian tanks would now be standing on the Polish border.
This tank was destroyed by the Ukrainians on the outskirts of Kyiv in late March. It belonged to a unit from the Russian Republic of Buryatia, located deep within Siberia. Ethnic minorities form a disproportionately large share of the Russian armed forces, largely due to the poor economic conditions of the non-Russian regions of the Russian Federation. A body of a Buryat soldier was found within the vehicle.
The European society finds it difficult to understand the scale of combat and the amount of heavy equipment halted by the Ukrainian armed forces, because the European society has not witnessed such conflict in 80 years.
Two S-19 MSTA-S self-propelled howitzers, such as this one, are the mainstay of Russian artillery. While this is the first exhibition of this kind, similar displays will be presented in other European cities, starting with the Czech capital of Prague. For TVP World, Krzysztof Panek.
One of the most prestigious tennis competitions in the world at the All England Lawn Tennis Club in Wimbledon began today. Thousands of fans from around the world flocked to England to observe the biggest tennis stars competing for the title. Despite the controversies surrounding the ban on Russian and Belarusian players, Wimbledon still garners the attention of millions of fans from around the world.
Even though titles won at this year's Wimbledon will not count towards the ATP and WTA rankings, following the ban on Russian and Belarusian players, some of the most prominent tennis stars will provide the fans with plenty of emotions.
Atmosphere on centre court today when Emma Raducanu was playing and then Andy Murray. I might try the strawberries and cream, and it happens to be our wedding anniversary today, so we will definitely be having a bottle of champagne.
The Wimbledon has always been one of the most prestigious tennis competitions in the world.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've always looked up to Wimbledon. It's like my favourite Grand Slam. I think it's just really nice, and the dress code of the place are very professional. So yeah, it's nice. It's worth the queuing, worth waking up at 5 o'clock this morning. Really looking forward to it.
The fans are really excited with this year's tournament.
This is my first time. We come from California, and this is like a dream come true. I can do this any day, all day long, every year.
The first women's racket in the world, Poland's Iga Świątek, says she is excited to take part in the competition.
I have so much, I don't know, a success this season that I don't have to kind of show everybody that I need to play well on every tournament, because it's tennis. We have ups and downs. So I try to play without expectations and just see what this tournament brings me.
The Wimbledon will last for 14 days. It will see male and female players compete in singles and doubles.
Staying with Wimbledon, Polish player Hubert Hurkacz has been knocked out in the first round.
Ano oras na?
Now
Di
I'm
ba,
pleased to introduce
yung mga
our special
tinatanong na
guest,
mga...
Yevgenia Kravchuk from Servant of the People Party. Ms. Kravchuk, thank you very much for joining us, taking the time to share your insights. Welcome to TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So,
Mamaya na lang, ako na lang ang pupunta.
what have been the
Guys,
biggest
pagkatid. Yes, sir. Magbili lang ako ng ano. Oh, no problem. Let's go.
If you would ask the things that are concerned with war that Russia is conducting against Ukraine, then I would say that clearly the statement of G7 that countries of G7 will be unconditionally supporting Ukraine as long as it's needed. Also, there was a clear statement about financial aid for Ukrainian budget. The further support with weapons and sanctions, and we saw another sanction package regarding gold, and importing gold from Russia is banned, which will cut around 18 or 19 billion dollars of revenue that Russia was getting each year, and that's the second line after gas and oil, what Russia sells.
Yes. Well, I mean, but much of this has been, part of the rhetoric for months now, hasn't it? Promises of funding, promises of military aid and support. But how much of that has actually been realized on the ground in Ukraine? And is this meeting, are these words any different?
I would say that we have slightly difference in the last few weeks, because before that, as you said correctly, there were promises. But finally, we're getting some heavy weapons on the ground, HIMARSs, different types of howitzers, that's artillery 155 caliber, which is NATO standard. And of course, we would need more air defense systems, and that's crucial. And today we had huge terrorist attack on one of the cities in Poltava region, Kremenchuk. Russian missile hit a shopping mall. That was full of people at that time. Just an ordinary supermarket where you come and buy food. Already we see the circumstances are tragic. Around 11 people reported dead, but that to be, I'm sure that the number will increase. And that's because, that Russia decides that it can bomb any city, any object. It was just ordinary shopping mall, not a military base or something.
Well, this is very much the Russian playbook. This is very much the Russian playbook. They've been doing it from the start of the war, and they're taking advantage of the fact that they have the heavy artillery, and so far Ukraine does not. So the question is, do we expect that any movement will occur in the provision of heavy artillery to Ukraine in the near future?
In this case, we have two main things that we need. As you said, heavy artillery, and that's for frontline. And HIMARSs, which we already got from the United States, are working good, because for the last few days we got very important hitings of like 50 kilometers from the front, where there are storages with missiles, and they were bombed, and also spots with a lot of militaries. And that's a success, but we need more this HIMARS, not 4, but 40, I would say.
Right.
And I hope that more numbers will come. And another thing is air defense system, to avoid such tragedies as occurred today in Kremenchuk, when missiles are just flying out of the air.
Yes, absolutely, and I think it's probably high time for these to actually start appearing on the ground in Ukraine. Moving on now to the upcoming NATO summit. What is the expectation there for and by Ukraine? What would President Zelensky like to see?
I really think that all of the Ukrainians would like to see a clear and transparent strategy towards both Russia, which is an aggressor and terrorist state, and actually it has been threatening, for example, Lithuania, which is part of NATO, with this way of transferring goods, which are sanctioned, and that actually put in danger the confidence into the fifth article, because countries in Baltic countries are thinking about how fast will NATO apply the fifth article if needed. So I think that very strong messages should be sent from Madrid in these days.
Yes.
Because NATO countries are much stronger, have much intellectual weapons, techniques, and they cannot be afraid of crazy dictator that is threatening the
Right.
whole world, because
Right.
someone has to put this bully at his place.
Yes, well, we've seen that appeasement does not work with Putin. Do you feel that NATO should play a role in protecting grain convoys out of Ukraine and onto the world markets?
Yes, that's what we've been asking to at least some NATO countries, if not the whole organization. because just relying on change of the shipment to a railroad or just to ordinary truck will not, do the job completely.
Right.
Because the amount of grain and corn and other food products that had to be shipped are much higher than possible, any logistics change.
Yes.
So we need these corridors in the Black Sea if we do not want a hunger in Africa or in the Middle East.
Well, let's hope some decisions are forthcoming on that at the summit. I'd like to move on now to Katyn. As you know, there was a massacre of around 22,000 Polish officers, members of the intelligentsia, and professional classes by Soviet soldiers there. We're hearing reports that the Polish flag has been removed from the cemetery. Are you hearing something similar?
Yes, I've heard these stories as well, and as a member of the committee, with cultural committee, which deals with historic things and how to protect memory of tragic moments as well. I clearly see that Russians are trying to erase historical memory. They are banning all of the memorial organizations. They dealt with Hula, that printed all of the secret service of Soviet time, and now these organizations are banned. So basically, Putin wants to rewrite history to to make Russian people as zombies. Just telling them how big their empire is right now, but
Right.
not remembering what happened before. And that's what they do on temporarily occupied territories. They change the names of the cities, of the streets. They take away history books. Bring the history books that were written in Russia, in Russia, and that's total propaganda. So that's how they want not to just kill people, but just erase cultural identity
Absolutely.
and memory.
Do you think that this might be an indirect threat towards Poland by Russia?
I think that Putin and the Russian Federation had numerous times stated that Poland is, they see Poland as an enemy. So I think that Poland should ask as well during the NATO summit in Madrid for more NATO troops at the ground, just to be sure, that NATO does see Russia
Yes.
as a threat.
Yeah.
So
I think
we, all of the neighbors need to be prepared.
absolutely. I think it's high time for that. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your insights with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that's all from us here in the newsroom on TVP World. Goodbye for now.
Hello, welcome to the main edition of World News. I'm Anna Jaborska. Let's take a look at the latest headlines. Historic NATO summit begun in Madrid. Number of civilian casualties killed in shopping mall raid increases. Enough talking, time to act. And in a second, I will be joined by our correspondent. Alexandra Marhevich is reporting on NATO summit in Madrid. And Ovidiu Szkindzieja will talk to us about the war in Ukraine from Kiev. Hello to both of you, and let's start with Alexandra. So today the NATO summit began. What are the expectations of this particular summit?
The long-awaited event in Madrid is taking place right now as we speak. This is the first actual day of the summit, and the main purpose is to create the strategic concept. 30 member states are creating this strategic concept that is to create the future of the North Atlantic Alliance for next 10 years to come. Polish President Andrzej Duda usually and also underlined recently the fact that the importance of Poland in strengthening the NATO eastern flank, as well as repelling Russians and Russian aggression in Ukraine.
Cóż mamy nadzieję na tym szczycie uzyskać?
We hope to show unity because unity is the most important thing today in the face of Russian aggression against Ukraine, in the face of everything that is happening today behind our eastern border, in the face of the tragedies that are taking place there, which we saw in Bucha, in Mariupol, and in other places, as well as yesterday in Kremenchuk. In NATO's 2010 strategic concept, Russia was referred to as a partner. It is high time to completely change this approach. Today, Russia is the greatest threat to the countries of the North Atlantic Alliance.
Dzisiaj Rosja jest największym zagrożeniem dla państw Sojuszu Północnoatlantyckiego.
Military alliance is also boosting its presence when it comes to numbers, taking it up to 300,000 soldiers. We are right now speaking of numbers of 40,000 soldiers as for now, but according to Jens Stoltenberg, the General Secretary of NATO, this has to stop and has to be boosted in order to security of member states' countries to be secured as it is. Another topic that is to be discussed during this very summit is the additionally Finland and Sweden application to NATO.
Make any promises, but I can just assure you that we are working actively to ensure progress because the applications of Finland and Sweden to join NATO, they are historic. It will strengthen the security of Finland and Sweden, it will strengthen NATO, and it will be something that will contribute to stability across the Euro-Atlantic area, Europe and North America.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Boris Johnson, underlined that world is shocked on recent events that are happening and still happening in Ukraine, the recent war crimes that we are witnessing as Europe itself. But additionally to that, he underlined that despite the threats, the fact that UK might be threatened by thus war in Ukraine is an unlikely scenario.
I don't think it will come to that, and clearly we're working very hard to make sure that we can find
How has Madrid prepared for the NATO summit? Is security on higher alert than usual?
Right now, as we speak, we are currently in the media center of Madrid. This very event, we were trying to get to police stations and police itself, but because of the security reasons, we could not film either of those places nor the people there. As it is said that this very place is one of the most secure ones in Spain.
We have been working for months and we have done controls in Finland, but we have also done controls in hotels, embassies, and other terrorists. It starts to detect many kinds of explosives, either handmade, military, or industrial.
the official number of people who have been killed in the attack from 16, 36 people were believed to be missing. But unfortunately, at this point, the Ukrainian services are informing that they conclusively find anyone alive in the rubble of that shopping center is close to zero. Right now, you should be seeing security camera footage from the moment when that attack in Kremenchuk happened. At the moment when the Russian missile hit that building, huge fire began in that building, and bursts of smoke were seen from far away. As you may have already heard, many people were inside the building. Many different sources, various to that particular number. But yesterday, President Zelensky said that 1,000 people were inside. So a very busy time when people were shopping there. Many believe this to be an act of terrorism on the part of the Russian Federation. And so many Western politicians have already condemned that attack. Let's now hear to what the local authorities in the city of Kremenchuk had to say about that attack.
I think there's probably one thing that all the people here are feeling: hatred. The other is a feeling of irreparable punishment that will befall these people. There is data on the internet about those who gave planes the order to fly out, data about the pilots who launched missiles into a commercial house full of civilians. We have data of the commanders who gave these orders, if they can even be called commanders at all. They killed dozens of civil residents who were in the mall. I'm sure they will face human and divine punishment for this.
Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov also addressed that attack. Stay tuned here because more on that later on in this program in just a few minutes.
Ovidiusz, I have one more question. Today is the Constitution Day in Ukraine. You are in Kiev. How is this day celebrated there in the face of the current situation?
Yes, you're correct. Today is the Constitution Day in Ukraine. Exactly 26 years ago from today, that document was signed into effect. But the mood here is far from jubilant. Russia recently has ramped up the dynamic of missile attacks around Ukraine. Not just the attack in Kremenchuk, but also today Dnipro was struck. Civilians were also targeted there. Several military targets across Ukraine were hit. And similarly, Kharkiv is also under attack. So I believe people are far from being happy about that. Of course, President Zelensky spoke about the Constitution Day. He said that in that document, it is enshrined that Ukraine has the right to decide for itself where it wants to belong. The right for sovereignty for Ukraine is enshrined in that constitution, and that Russia right now is trying to take that right away. Let's hear to a fragment of that speech by President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
The occupier waited for hospitable reception, but received fierce resistance, meeting not with bread and salt, but with Stugna and javelins, Bayraktar and Neptune, Alder and HIMARS. Our resistance has been going on for 125 days. For the world, it's the 9th miracle. For the enemy, it's the 9th shout. And for us, it is the 17th article of the Constitution of Ukraine.
Thank you for your report, and that was Ovidiusz live from Kiev. Now back to our news service. And now we look at other events which have taken place in Ukraine. The Kremlin denies the blame for bombing the shopping mall in Kremenchuk. Other Ukrainian cities are witnessing deadly attacks as well. 9 people were killed in the Russian shelling on Kharkiv, while a grain warehouse was destroyed in the south of the country.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov denied that his country is responsible for the attack on the shopping mall in Kremenchuk.
The Russian Defense Minister explained very clearly what actually happened. They bombed a hangar where American and European weapons and ammunition had been brought, and as a result of the detonation of ammunition, an empty shopping center standing next to it caught fire.
Meanwhile, the Russian shelling of the northern outskirts of Kharkiv resulted in the deaths of 9 people. 31 more were wounded. One of the targets shelled by the Russians was a local school.
On the night of June 27th, going on the 28th, one of Kharkiv's educational institutions was turned into rubble. According to experts, Russian forces hit the building with 2 missiles. The building is badly damaged. Luckily, there have been no casualties. Children and staff are on vacation.
Russian attacks affect not only big cities, but smaller localities as well. In the Mykolaiv region, wheat fields were set on fire as a result of shelling. A grain storage facility was also damaged in the village of Pervoniais. Russian invasion of Ukraine led to a shortage of grain worldwide, as the country now has difficulties planting, harvesting, and exporting this key food product. Exporting the grain from the European Union does not allow for transporting all of Ukraine's production. Obecnej chwili.
Hello everyone. My name is Han Hanzhou. My name is Wang Yizhou. My name is Shen Zhiling. My name is Wang Guoliang. We are friends from grade 5 in Longshan Primary School. Maybe you don't know where Longshan is, but you must know the word famous.
录像。录像。
Sharp referendums, annexations, and a large conscription drive. Vladimir Putin is trying to salvage his special military operation. Instead, this illegal war on Ukraine has now arrived in the middle of Russian society. While opposition seems to be growing, protests are increasing, and thousands of Russian men of fighting age are fleeing conscription. A true exodus of well-educated men has begun. They refuse.
Alam mo, 10 na oh. Isang oras na lang. Sa iyo.
Bayad po na.
Tayo may ano kayo dyan? Plato. Plato at saka, kutsara. Tinidor.
Okay na, kutsara. Si sandok, ano ba yung sandok? Oh, sige.
for Putin's imperial ambitions. We ask on To The Point, protests and mass flight, is Russia finally turning on Putin? Hello and welcome on To The Point. Let me introduce today's panel. Maria Makieva, a journalist from Russia, currently living and working in Berlin, and editor-in-chief of the Russian-language TV channel Ost-West. Daniel Brössler, correspondent for the German broadsheet Süddeutsche Zeitung here in Berlin, and a former correspondent in several Eastern European countries, including Moscow. Plus, our very own Roman Goncharenko, DW's Russia analyst, joining us from DW's Bonn headquarters. A warm welcome to you all. Let's start with this. Putin keeps escalating the referendums, sham referendums, we have to say, nuclear threats, annexations, and possibly even sabotage of gas pipeline, even though that's not confirmed. So let's talk about the pipelines for a moment. And I'd like to start with you, Roman. In which way would Russia benefit from blowing up these pipelines?
Well, I guess there are just a few points how Russia could benefit from it. The most obvious is this sense gas prices sky high. So they are high now, extremely high, and they are still getting even higher and higher. So Russia will profit from that. I'm not a legal expert, but I think this could lower the pressure on Russia to deliver some gas and to fulfill its obligations, because Russia can say now, well, we don't know what happened. It will take time to investigate. We do not know whether we can point and say for sure who did it. So when Russia refused to take German turbines from Siemens to deliver gas, it's one thing. Now it's a different story. Of course, this will put enormous pressure on the societies in Western Europe, where people are taking to the streets to protest against high energy prices. And last but not least, I think this is also sending a signal to the West: look what we can do. We can heat your infrastructure under the sea. And there are important, not just gas or oil pipelines, but also communication lines between the United States, North America, and Europe. And Russia could just hint at that and say, look, we can do it.
Maria, do you agree? Is Putin trying to send a signal to the West?
If it's so, this is a very bad signal, I should say, because that means that he definitely believes West, that they're really eager to switch to other sources of energy. And because it's very difficult to repair it, I mean, almost impossible to repair all this stuff, and this is billions of euro. So if he believes that and he decided physically tear up this connection, what does it mean? I mean, that means that he's in his very final phase of his being as a president, as a leader of the country.
Burning the bridges, if you will.
Absolutely, absolutely, and this is very bad news. And the main question for me now, will he use tactical nuclear